Welcome to FounderLine, the show where we answer your questions about startups. I'm your host, Joe Beninato. Thanks for joining us. It's great to have you all with us. Our goal with FounderLine is to provide a way for people who are interested in startups to get their questions answered about startups. Usually by experienced entrepreneurs or investors who know something about the subject matter. You might be somebody who's starting a company for the first time, or you might be a founder who's already started a company and you have an issue that you're dealing with and you want to get some advice. You might be an employee who is thinking about joining a startup and you want to ask some questions about what life is like inside of a startup. Whatever it is, we'd like to try and help you out. This is a live show, and it only works if you send us questions, and you can do that multiple ways. You can email us questions to help@founderline.com. You can tweet to us. Our Twitter handle is @FounderLine. And new today, we just added this, there's a new form that you can find in our Twitter feed where you can submit questions anonymously using Google Forms. So any of those ways, we'd love to hear from you. With that, let's get started today. Our guest today is Patrick Chung, who's a founding partner of Xfund. Patrick was previously a partner at NEA, where he led their consumer and seed stage investment practice. He's invested in companies like 23andMe, Looped, and as we found out last week, Xfire. Patrick, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
It is so good to be here. You were like the Oprah or the Howard Stern of Silicon Valley.
I like to be a mix of the two, maybe.
I hope the most controversial ones.
You know, I don't know if I've told this story on air, but the heritage of FounderLine is a show called Loveline, which used to be on back in, well, and it's still on with Dr. Drew.
Yes.
Your anonymous questions about sex and life and growing up and whatever else.
Those questions are fine too if you want to ask us those. That'd be totally good too.
Absolutely. So I've heard that I forget the guy. There was Dr. Drew, and then there was the other guy whose name he was.
Dr. Drew was the guy with the white hair, right?
Yeah. And then Adam Carolla. And supposedly Adam Carolla is like a tech entrepreneur now. So I was thinking,
he really?
Yeah, I was thinking he has like this podcast media empire.
Wow.
And so I was thinking of having him on as a guest sometime.
That would be real, and you could be kind of a sex and tech thing.
There you go. So we're gonna get right on that.
Oh boy, I hope not.
Yeah. So before we help people out, I have just a few questions for you.
Sure.
Get you warmed up. Get you comfortable.
How can we get warmer after discussing Loveline?
Yeah, exactly. So the first question is, you spent many years at NEA, one of the world's largest VC funds. Maybe is it the world's largest?
I believe that NEA is the largest VC fund in the world.
Yeah. Yes. So in the time period from when you joined NEA and now, a lot has changed in the world of venture capital, and so I found that founders are really appreciative of sort of hearing people's thoughts on, okay, well, what's changed since 10 years ago or whatever it was in the world of VC. So what have you seen? Obviously, you've moved on to a new, different sort of opportunity, but tell us a little bit about the ecosystem and what's going on.
Yeah, I think venture capital has become it's always been very exciting, but it's become even more so just in the last kind of 2 or 3 years, because as you say, there are huge tectonic shifts happening in this market. The biggest one is probably that there's never been, in my view, a larger gulf between the top-tier firms and everyone else. And so there are a group of maybe 5 or 6 firms which you can name and I can name and we can figure out, we can Google them on the internet, that attract an ever larger disproportionate share of capital, of the great deals, of talent. And then there's that group, and then there are a kind of a vast middle, which some of them will survive, some of them won't. And then what is the most exciting, especially for young founders, is that there's a new group of young firms, of which I would humbly include Xfund, Felicis, Andreessen Horowitz, where you've got kind of first-time venture investors who are really challenging that model again.
The status quo, right?
And it's really exciting because for the first time you're seeing real innovation in what is being offered to founders.
Absolutely. And do you see, like, in this world, you know, we've seen some shifts where some of these larger firms, which used to be the first money into startups, have moved like even later stage, right? Like they're doing Series C and D investments. Like KP is an example where, you know, I think used to be they were the first money in, and now they're doing these later stage deals. So is NEA sort of in that boat as well, or are other large firms sort of following that same model of, you know, the seed funds have come in and they're these larger, more incumbent players who are doing the later stage rounds?
Yeah, I think there are definitely firms that have migrated to later stages. NEA is probably not one of them. So when I was at NEA, we founded a seed stage investing practice because we had this arbitrary rule that that we would only invest 500K and more in every company. Well, of course, 500K today, you can start, you know, the cost of starting a company has been asymptotically approaching zero for a long time. If you have a laptop and a broadband connection, you can start a company. And so NEA felt itself locked out of a whole universe of really interesting activity by having that kind of, really frankly, at the end of the day, arbitrary rule. And so we founded a seed stage practice to take advantage of it, because when we looked at I think, you know, it's been a while since I did this study, but when we looked at kind of the top 30 returning companies of NEA, more than half of them had been companies in which we had been the first institutional capital. We were the seed before there was such a thing called seed.
I see.
And so it was really important that we maintain that that dominance in the earliest stages of company formation, because that's when you can, number one, affect the trajectory of the company. You can help the founder the most. You can help the founder choose between, you know, whole areas of business that she may or may not want to pursue. And then, of course, from the investment perspective, you can get a lot of ownership early on. And
for not as much money.
For not as much money as when you know, invest in, you know, X company at, you know, $50 billion.
Yes, yes, that's a little bit harder to do. So right now, you know, there's a lot of talk about the Series A crunch. You know, all these early stage companies have raised seed funds of anywhere between, you know, 100K and a couple $1 million, and they're the top of the funnel, right? And then there's a limited number of dollars available at the Series A level. So, you know, we've kind of heard that this is going to happen or is happening. So what have you seen with your companies and, you know, with regards to this so-called Series A crunch?
I don't think the Series A crunch is a myth. It is just arithmetic, frankly. You know,
math?
It's just the math. It's just the math. Because when you look at the number of seed stage investments that are made, and you look at the number of Series A's that, you know, presumably they graduate into, the number's like, you know, probably less than 10 to 1.
Wow.
And so what's happening to the 9 out of 10 that don't graduate to Series A? When we started the seed stage practice, we did a grand study of a lot of different firms that were entering the seed stage market, and you saw radically different graduation rates. So there were some firms that in the time that we may have invested in 50 seed stage companies had invested in literally 350 seed stage companies, and their graduation rate, that is the number of those companies that actually made it to Series A, varied between 1% and 2%. Sometimes it was 4%.
Wow.
At NEA, when I had, the last time I looked at the statistics, we were at about 60% graduate to Series A. At Xfund, we're at 100% graduation to Series A. 100% of the companies that we've invested in that have gone on to raise Series A have been successful doing that.
Wow, that's
and
impressive.
So yeah, and it's a function of how much care you give them, how selective you are. At Xfund, we saw about 3,500 companies, of which in the first fund we invested in 5. So it was an incredibly high bar. And so you would hopefully expect that most of them were great companies that moved on to Series A. But the Series A crunch is not a you know, many people think it's a disaster. They describe it as an apocalypse, that people will, you know, they won't get Series A funding and then they'll just jump off a bridge or something. I don't think that's true. I actually think the Series A crunch is a fantastic thing, and here's why. It's because when your seed stage company doesn't succeed, it's not the end of life for you, for your founding team, for your anything. The fact of the matter is that these teams reconstitute in all sorts of ways. They get better. They learn faster. 6 or 7 years ago, if you started a company to get a product out, to get the first market feedback, it would probably have taken you 2 to 3 years and maybe $4 to $5 million.
Right.
Today, with $750K, $500K, and 9 months, you can get to the same degree. You can get a product out, you can get the first market feedback, you can figure out if there's product market fit, you can see if your team is gelling, and if it doesn't work, you've just learned what it used to take 2 or 3 years to learn. You've just learned that in 9 months, and you're so much better. And so when you get into your next thing, you know, you're going to be that much better. And so you see this acceleration of skill set and competence, which I think is a phenomenal thing.
Yep. No, I totally agree. And it actually helps a little bit with the hiring squeeze because, you know, there are a lot of companies where they're failing and the founders and the early team is sort of going back into the ecosystem, right?
That's right.
And they can be hired at another startup that maybe reached product market fit or has graduated to the Series A level or something like that.
That's totally right. That's totally right.
We need more of that, actually, I think. So,
and it's emblematic of the mantra that has always been, you know, characteristic of Silicon Valley, which is that failure is actually a great thing.
Yeah. It kind of sucks when you're in the middle of it.
Sure.
But yes.
But what does not kill you makes you stronger. Remember that. That
is right. That is right. So now, you know, you're off doing Xfund, and you know, you left the world's largest venture capital firm to go pursue this opportunity. So obviously, you saw something amazing here to go after it. So tell us more about that decision, and then, you know, the sorts of companies that you're looking to fund. This is your advertising section
okay,
of the
terrific. So it was an easy decision. Xfund. Well, Xfund. Just to take you through the history of Xfund. When I ran NEA's consumer internet practice and seed stage investing practice, we had a very unique opportunity in about 2009, 2010. And at that point, Harvard had a department of engineering, which it had recently converted into a full-fledged school of engineering with its own dean, with its own campus. And if you're the dean of engineering at Harvard, you have a very interesting challenge, which is, how do I create a new engineering school just down the street from one of the finest engineering institutions ever, MIT?
Yes, I won't hold that against you.
Okay. How do you compete against Stanford? How do you compete against Caltech and Carnegie Mellon, all Technion, Cornell Tech? And the dean of engineering at Harvard really had 2 pillars of differentiation. The first is that engineering at Harvard exists in the context of this large university with a fantastic medical school and business school and physics department, things that other schools perhaps don't have as much of. And so she wanted to really stress the interdisciplinary nature of engineering at Harvard. And secondly, she wanted to implant entrepreneurship at the very heart of this campus that gave birth to Microsoft and Facebook and Zappos and Bloomberg. And so we began a negotiation with her for 2.5 years to figure out, would Harvard ever consider partnering or collaborating with a for-profit commercial venture capital firm. In the end, we got it done. The firm, although started with Harvard's help, is open to everyone, has been open to everyone since the very beginning. You don't have to have gone to Harvard. You don't have to have gone to college to participate in Xfund. And it brings together some really, really unique assets that you can't get in any other venture firm. So first and foremost, you have the resources of 3 of the world's top venture firms. You have NEA, you've got Excel Partners, which is our co-founder. You've got Breyer Capital and Jim Breyer. And second, you've got this massive global community of Harvard, and they're willing to extend their reach and their power and their position in service of people who never went to Harvard or never had any affiliation with Harvard.
That's awesome.
And we've seen that again and again and again. So what type of founders are we looking for? We call them liberal arts founders. And when we say that, I think we're still trying to grapple with the words here. We don't mean necessarily art history majors. We mean people who are technically competent, but who have some broader view of the world. And to us, there are 2 reasons that we are looking for liberal arts founders. Number one, the most technical aspects of starting a company now have been abstracted away. You know, 5 or 6 years ago, if you wanted to start a company, you had to drive down to San Jose, buy your own, you must remember this, you had to rack your own servers, configure them, you had to structure your own database.
You'd have a team, you have an ops team.
You have a whole team, yeah. And when it went down in the night, you'd get a phone call and you drive down there and try to fix it in the middle of the night because your site was experiencing downtime.
Yes. Well, I didn't personally, but somebody did.
Thank God.
Yes. Mohammed, my good friend Mohammed would go do that for us. So.
I mean, but that's an incredible thing because that was actually a real competitive advantage. How well you did that mattered a lot to the survival, the ultimate survival of your company, how fast your pages would load. Today, you flick on AWS and it's done. You can't configure a data center better than Amazon can. You can't maintain uptime as well as they can.
As their earnings just demonstrated to us recently, right?
But that's just one example of something that used to be a very technical thing that was a competitive differentiator that is no longer. And you see that in all sorts of, even the design of your logo, you know, your integration with an e-commerce platform. How do you take payments? You used to have to build that stuff or have massive integration. Today, all those things are things that you just turn on and off, and you can hot swap really easily.
Yep.
And so what's left? What's left is that you're forced to concentrate on what truly differentiates your company. And if you are a person who is very narrowly focused on just making something faster and better, faster and more efficient, you're not going to see the broader scope of things. And so you will miss out on some of the real opportunities. One of our founders, the Dean of Engineering at Harvard, tells this great story of a team at MIT who was building the perfect mosquito net for deployment in Africa. And they designed the tensile strength of the strings perfect, the mesh size was perfect, the type of insecticide they put there was perfect. They manufactured millions of these things, shipped them off to Kenya and Sudan, where they were not used at all because they had colored them white, which in those cultures is the color of death. It's like in the Asian culture, you don't wear black to a funeral, you wear white to a funeral. It's the color of death.
Right.
And so you took these nets that were technically perfect products, but since you didn't have a broader understanding, you colored them the color of death, and they just didn't get used.
Wow.
And so that's an example of, that's not a liberal arts founder to us. A liberal arts founder can make that perfect technical product and has the presence of mind to know, no, we're going to make them black or brown or blue.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I hope it continues to go well. So why don't we take some questions?
Excellent.
And see if we can help some people.
About your love life or about startups?
Yes, whatever is on your mind. So luckily, the first question is about startups. So
sometimes they're the same thing.
Yes.
There are many co-founders that are involved.
So the first question is from Andy, and sometimes these are real names, sometimes these are not real names.
Andy, Andrea.
So as a startup, I'm competing with Google for the Valley's top engineers and can't give the benefits or pay that they do. What are some suggestions to help me convince people to work with me instead of for Google? Should I change the types of engineers I go after, like not go after engineers from top schools? So recruiting, big problem in startups.
Yep.
You know, here's Andy's story, which is repeated daily by many companies.
It's very typical for struggling startups. You're right. You're never going to be able to compete on a cash basis with Google. What you will be able to compete on are I would say, kind of three dimensions. Number one, just on the pure economics, which is not the most important thing, is just the upside in your equity. And so there was a great piece recently, I think maybe a month ago in the first round review, where the head of recruiting for Coursera had this amazing spreadsheet where he basically priced out all of the offers that you would get from Google, from Facebook, from Microsoft, cash plus restricted stock plus the value of that plus the potential upside of that, and he matched it against what you get at Coursera. Much lower cash up front, but the stock had a lot greater upside. And a lot of people don't really, they have that kind of generalistic view of, oh yeah, I'm sure that you could probably get a 10x on Coursera stock, but it's hard to see how you could get a 10x on Google stock. And he just priced it out. He just put a real spreadsheet down with real numbers that said, this is our ambition. And if you help our ambition materialize, then here's what you can expect. And that, the row with the Coursera numbers, just blew everything out of the water. So that's number one. I think you have to make it real for employees that you're recruiting. Number two is, when you join a small startup, you just have a lot of headroom to grow, not only financially, but responsibility-wise. I mean, in a large organization, you can, you just look up the chain of command and you think, like, how many years is it going to take me to get that, my title plus the word senior, then my title plus the word senior executive plus my title plus the word, and we're in a startup, if you do well, like next month, you could call yourself whatever you want.
Right.
And the thing is, you can shift from, you might start off in business development, but you might move into marketing, you might move into operations. And so you end up learning, this is kind of what we're talking about with the Series A crunch, you end up, the velocity of learning is so much faster, which only inures to you. That's benefit that only comes to you. And so that, for the right type of person, which is, I think, the only type of person you really want in a startup, that ought to be the most attractive. And then third, and I think this is the thing that I found kind of most effective, is the sense of mission of the company. If you have a very well articulated and differentiated mission in the company, that often just kind of blows everything else out of the water. They may be convinced that they will never make as much money as in one of those giant incumbents. They may be convinced that they will always kind of be a marketer and that's it. But if they believe in the mission of the company, it's really important. So I don't know what company Andy is working on. But the companies that I've worked with that have been really very successful, prying people out of Apple, Google, Facebook, all the kind of really strong incumbents out there have had a sense of mission that everyone there believed in.
Yep, and I think it's smart because you can't compete necessarily on the cash basis day one, right? Right. So I think it's about the team you're working with, the mission. The upside, which, a lot of people who've been through startups and some of them have failed. They've become a little jaded about stock options, right? Like, well, that's probably not going to amount to much. So I want the cash comp plus the equity that I can get. So, but I do think if you can give them some sense of purpose, like we are going to go change the world in X, whatever that field is. I think that's a big deal. So
the other thing is that. All those big companies will always be there. They'll always be there. And the cash will always be there. And if you wanted to eventually join one of them, and you gave me the choice between joining one of them today or 3 years hence, when under my belt I have 3 years of phenomenal experience, I rose to become VP of operations, like that person with that 3 year, even if that company went under, is a lot more valuable and will fetch higher rates in the market. And and the delta between those two is probably larger than if I stayed at that big company and climbed up the ladder for 3 years.
That's a good argument. I've never used that one. I'll have to remember that. That's a good. That's
but
good.
It's true. It's true.
We'll add that to the list. We'll
good luck, Andy. Keep trucking.
Yeah. So all right. Next one is from Mikey. What is a character trait that you see among the best VCs that founders underestimate when deciding on who to partner with?
That is a very good question. So there was a, and Mikey, I would look at, I think it's the NVCA who published this, and maybe we can put it on your site after this. Oh, yeah. But there was a VC brand survey. I don't know if you ever saw that, but no. I think it was either Kauffman Foundation or the NVCA who published it, and they commissioned, or it might have been someone totally different, but they commissioned a very wide-ranging survey of both investors and entrepreneurs, and they asked questions like, what do you value in an investor most? And they asked the investors things like, what do you value? Like, what do you think they're valuing about you?
Right.
And it was, in general, very, very consistent. Number one on the list was just simply trustworthiness and support. When things go well in your company, everyone loves you. Everyone's your friend. There's just, it's all kind of milk and honey everywhere.
Yes.
The difference, in my view, between a good investor and a bad investor is in the bad times what happens. In the bad times, do they step off your board? Do they stop taking your call? Do they shun you? Do you feel like a second-class citizen? Or do they really pitch in and they say, okay, we're in this together. We're always going to be in it together. Let's solve this problem. And it's really that kind of level of support that for both venture investors and for entrepreneurs was the highest ranked. Interestingly enough, in that survey, the one that had the greatest discrepancy was so-called value added. Venture investors felt that entrepreneurs, somewhat self-flatteringly, the venture investors felt the entrepreneurs loved them because they actually felt like, I know so much more about your business than you know, and so I'm going to give you the pearls of wisdom.
I'll tell you what to do.
I'll tell you what to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And
you can go.
You'll do it, and all your problems will be solved.
Yes.
And the entrepreneurs felt like that the value added was actually one of the least valuable things.
Yes.
And that was a very telling conclusion of the survey. So To answer Mikey's question, what trait of your investor? I think it really is, at the end of the day, ask yourself, will they be supportive in good times and bad? And they can say whatever they want to you, but really what you should do is go out there and talk to companies that they've actually worked with. Talk to not the ones that did well, because they're going to be like, oh, I love that guy. Yeah. He made me a huge smash success. Talk to the ones that went bankrupt. Talk to the ones that had horrible times, and ask them, how was this person to work with in those terrible times? Would you work with this person again? And there, I think you're going to find the really telling answers.
And you'd be surprised how many founders do not do that sort of reference checking on their potential investors, And there's a new phenomenon recently, which is the, phone call and then expecting a check afterwards, especially in the angel world, right?
Right.
And this has happened to me recently, and I tell people, why would you want to take money from somebody that you've never met in person? Like, first of all, I'm not writing you a check, so don't, let's put that aside. But you should want to know more about me.
Totally.
Like you don't want me. What if I'm the sort of investor who calls you every day and is bugging you or is detrimental in some way? Like you just don't want that.
You might hate this person, and a lot of people analogize investment to a marriage, but I actually think that it goes way beyond a marriage, because in most religions, when you marry someone, if it's irreconcilable, you can get out of that.
Right.
In an investment, you can't get out of it, because I have purchased outright a part of your company. It's like that shirt on your back, Joe, belongs to you.
Yeah.
And you own that thing. And when I purchase it, I own that thing, and you can't take it back.
Yeah.
And so you can't actually get out of this so-called marriage. It's actually more permanent than a marriage. The other thing that was really telling in this VC brand survey was they charted how important entrepreneurs felt brand was versus the individual. And that gulf is widely divergent now. It used to be a decade ago that the brand mattered a lot. So I think now you have a little bit of a lazy throwback to entrepreneurs think to themselves, oh, the name of that firm is so famous. I really love them. I'm gonna do a phone call with them, and if they'll take me on, I'll just sign on the dotted line. And they don't realize that firm is a collection of incredibly different people, all of whom have widely divergent skill sets and aptitudes and compatibilities with you. And it really behooves you to disaggregate the individuals from the firm and really choose a person
Absolutely.
that you want to work with.
Couldn't agree more. And I would put it at like 95-5, like in terms of the person and the brand. There is some equity in working, like if Andreessen Horowitz wants to put money in, or Sequoia or somebody big, you go, oh, well, that's kind of cool. But what if you and the partner who's giving you the money don't see eye to eye, and you get fired 6 months in? Like, that's going to be bad.
And that's happened.
It's absolutely happened. So great feedback from Mikey. Hopefully that helps a little bit. And I think when I'm investing, and I'm sure you think about this as well, you think about, well, how can I help these people the most, right? Because they're going to be my references when the time comes for something else. And it's a very small community, and that word can get around. So you better be working with people. And that's not to say you can't be tough during certain time frames, but do reference checks. Please do reference checks on your potential investors, because that's really critical.
And talk to the ones that had terrible times.
The ones where the CEOs got fired. Those are the ones you need to talk to, those CEOs who got fired. Trust me.
The wise man here.
Well, as a CEO who was fired, I can speak to that very specifically. Okay, so let's do one more.
Well, hey, just out of curiosity, in that situation, were there investors that you would speak well of even through difficult times like that?
Well, so in this hypothetical example, there were 3 institutional VCs, and one from a dominant fund sort of made the call, and it was very personal in nature. And so what I was really disappointed in is the other 2 said to me, you know what, we don't necessarily agree, but if we go against that guy, we're never going to see another deal from firm ABC again.
Yeah.
And that was incredibly disappointing to me,
Right.
because I kind of felt like, well, is that I don't really give a shit about the next deal you're going to see from those
Right,
guys.
right.
Like, what I
This is
care
my
about
life.
this company, right?
Yeah.
And the biggest slap in the face is, so you bring in the new guy, blow through $40 million hypothetically,
Yes.
and then after it all goes to shit, they come back and say, would you be willing to come back and clean up the mess
Oh,
afterwards,
please.
right? And it's just like this is your baby. Like,
Yeah,
you not literally, but you helped to bring this thing into the world, and so that was a very very challenging time. If I had a therapist, I could say that I had to go through many years of therapy to recover from that thing.
Yeah,
and,
no, I can
I've seen it
imagine.
with lots of other people as well. But the other investors, like, I'm just like, really, you're not going to
just
stand
rolled
up for
over.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been in those situations
Yeah.
before, but it's just
Well,
really
that's
tough.
too bad.
So
that is bad. Yeah.
what can you do? Life goes on.
But you can learn from it, and
Yeah,
you can learn from it too, Mikey.
Absolutely. So, so we, believe it or not, we are halfway through the show.
Oh, boy.
So it's time for you to relax and just have a beverage and hang out. And we're gonna take a minute now to thank our sponsors. So, we couldn't do this show without the great support we receive from our amazing sponsors, Oric, Square One Bank, Accretive Solutions, and Ustream, where many of you are probably watching the show right now. So first, let's start off with the team over at Oric. I've known Mitch Zuckley and a number of other people there for many, many years, worked on multiple companies, including FounderLine. And I always tell people that, of course, you want to have a lawyer who can, do all of your legal documentation, your employment agreements, your financings, business development deals, if you're doing partnerships with somebody. But more importantly, you want a lawyer who can be one of your most important advisors, who has seen way more transactions than you'll ever see, has seen way more hirings and firings than you'll ever see, and unless you're a lawyer, and who can help you out and sort of help you navigate those waters. So what I found incredibly helpful from Mitch, and as well as from other great lawyers I've worked with in the past, is when they could provide you with that insight. It's like, well, the last 15 times we've done it, here's how we've structured, the founder agreements. So you might want to push here, but you don't want to push on that. Those sorts of things, that can be really invaluable. So you can find out more at their website. Their website is oric.com, and I'm sure they do as great a job for you as they've done for me over the years. Next, we'd like to thank our new sponsor for this season, which is Square One Bank. And I've been working with Sam Baumick and Lori Lumenti-Garty over at Square One for many years. And it's really important when you're doing a startup to have a great financial backing behind you. And your bank, of course, they're going to take care of your money and make sure that everything's safe and secure. But you want things like, really easy to use online banking services, or a company credit card. That many founders make the mistake of like putting everything on their personal credit card, and then if it ever blows up, they have personal debt that they've never taken care of. So if you're interested in finding out more about Square One, you can contact Lori Lumenti-Garty, and you can check out their website as well. It's squareonebank.com. That's square with the number 1 bank.com, and I'm sure they'll help you out. Next, we have Accretive Solutions. So Accretive is the leading business outsourcing firm in Silicon Valley, and originally, when I was talking with Martini, who's our sponsor over there, I had to ask her, well, what exactly is business outsourcing? Like, I know you've been my interim CFO for a long time, and that's exactly what they do. They sort of run your finance operations for you until you get to a size where you need to worry about having a full-time CFO and a controller and accountants and everything else for your billion-dollar company. If you're looking for somebody to help you out with that sort of stuff, to do the books, to take care of payroll, to do accounts receivable, accounts payable, whatever those sorts of things are, they can help you out very cost effectively. And make sure that your house is in order. And this is really important when acquisitions come along, to make sure that you have your finances in order, all the paperwork is taken care of. Believe me, those scrambling days when you're in the midst of negotiating an acquisition and they're doing diligence and you have to go find all the documents and all the people you hired and the people who potentially have left and all those sorts of things, really kind of a pain in the neck. So make sure you get somebody great. Martini Nigano is the person I've worked with there. She was my interim CFO at Tello, and she's helping us out now with FounderLine as well. So you can find out more at their website. It is as-bos.com, and again, I'm sure they'll do a great job for you. Finally, last but not least, I'd like to thank the team over at Ustream. We've been working with them since day one. Brad Hunstable and Warren and the entire team over there have been helping us out. We stream the show live every week, and we couldn't do this without their support. If you are a company and you have some events to do, company meetings, maybe you're a broadcaster and you want to spread the word about something that you're an expert on, you can go and create your own show and broadcast it over Ustream. So again, go check out their website if you want to find out more. It is ustream.tv. Whew, I'm out of breath.
Those were very good endorsements because they were very personal, and you had personal experience with all of them, which is not always the case.
That is why we picked them. I always wonder how some of these athletes, I'm endorsing X, and you're like, right. Come on, Brett Favre's never used that. Or my favorite right now is LeBron driving a Kia. I just go, nothing wrong with a Kia, but. He's got a Ferrari and he's got some
stretches. It's a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah, yeah. But they show him in his Kia and he does well. Yes. So anyway, I mean what I say. I would not. Those
television audiences, unlike yours, are just not as sharp.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, so let's get back. We've got about 25 minutes here to answer questions. So we are gonna get to as many as we can. Here is an email from Don. This one said, someone who watched our show, apparently.
Oh.
On the show last week.
Don't they all watch your show?
Well, they could be first-time viewers, but
okay, fine.
Don has at least seen one other show.
Perfect.
On the show last week, Joe mentioned that you said that Mike Cassidy was one of the best founders you've ever worked with. Mike was here.
Yes.
What attributes does Mike possess that separate him from other founders you've worked with? Ooh, nothing like putting you on the spot.
Are you kidding? That's not putting me on the spot. That is totally easy.
And Mike's such a great guy.
Anyone who has met Mike Cassidy understands three things about Mike Cassidy. First of all, he has so much energy. I think that's why he is in such good shape. He looks like a marathon runner. It's because his life is a marathon. He is running all the time, everywhere. He has an unnatural amount of just pure energy that he channels into everything.
Yes.
And so
you really could benefit from some of that energy. You're looking a little low today, Patrick.
I was telling Joe before the show began, I am hyperactive, so
yes.
I don't drink caffeine either.
You guys bonded on the high energy.
I just love it because we were like,
yes.
That's number one. Number two, so that is like his engine. His engine has a lot of horsepower, but an engine is only good if you can match it with gears that really take you places.
Yes.
And so the other thing that's great about Mike is that he is very results oriented. He'll set very specific goals about. I have a ton of energy. Instead of diffusing it through the world in a kind of light mist, I'm going to concentrate it all as a laser, and I'm going to hit that and that and that and that and that. And he just is so systematic about it.
Yep.
When I last saw Mike, we met at 8:30 p.m. at his house. And I was like, do you usually have people over at 8:30? And he served me a glass of water. And he was like, yeah, I do this because this is one of my meeting slots. And I was like,
8:30 p.m.
Kids are at bed. He's finished his dinner. It was just an efficiency thing. And it was just so well directed. And third, which is the real, I feel like this is the killer trifecta. You've got energy, you've got direction to your energy, and third of all, he is just so optimistic. He doesn't see the glass half empty ever. He is just always looking for what could go right with this. What is the good part about this?
Yep.
And that is a trait that I think is number one, necessary to keep most founders sane. And also, I think, really characterizes many of the best venture investors, because when you see a new business come in, or a new concept, or a new idea, new technology, it is, the easy thing to do is to list the dozens or hundreds of things that obviously this won't work because,
right.
That takes no talent whatsoever.
Right.
What takes the talent is you look at something and you try to cast your memory, you try to cast your head into the future and say, how could this actually work?
Yep.
How could this be fantastic?
Yep.
And that requires a type of optimism that Mike was born with. I just believe he just exudes.
Yeah, no, he's great. And in fact, I remember chatting with him about, and you probably experienced this, he had the one-page board package, right? It was just his list of like, here's what's going on, here's what we're focusing on, like hour and a half board meeting, like,
right.
And I'm like, wow, you can pull that off with your board? He's like, absolutely. You just got to manage them.
And they were the most effective board meetings.
Yeah.
They were really the most effective. He's really remarkable.
He's great, and he said great things about you as well. So
that's nice.
We have and this is a total coincidence, by the way. We did not have the foresight to plan this, where you guys would
That's
be
why
on
you've got a call-in show.
Exactly.
It's the fun of this.
So
Someone
Don,
ask a question about their girlfriend or boifriend now.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen any of those popping up on here, but
all right.
we got some interesting ones coming. Okay.
Okay. All right.
So
here we go.
This one's from Pat. What are the most important characteristics you look for in a founder before funding them? And we just talked about Mike, so there's some of them. How long does it take you to determine if the founder has those characteristics after meeting them? What are some signals you look for? How would a woman have an advantage or disadvantage? This was from Pat. Ooh,
Okay.
and ambiguous. So I don't know if that Pat is a male or a female.
Are you making a reference to that Saturday Night Live?
I
skit?
am.
Oh, that was a good skit.
I can't remember who the actor was, but
yeah, I don't remember either. But it was, it was.
Oh, I'm hearing. It just came to me somehow. Julia Sweeney is the actor.
Yes, Julia Sweeney.
Yes,
right.
So,
a favorite.
Thank you so much.
She actually made my childhood very difficult, Julia Sweeney.
Oh,
being named
Pat.
Pat.
That is right. Well, this is. Maybe you submitted this question. Who knows?
I would, yeah. On unlike the BlackBerry, where you could type under the table and have no one notice, you can't really do that. You have to look at the iPhone.
Yeah.
Okay, gosh, there was a lot in there. So Pat.
Most important characteristics. How long does it take you to determine them, and some signals you look for?
Okay, great. Most important characteristics that I look for, and everyone looks for different things. I look for fundamental irrationality, because you have to be irrational to be an entrepreneur. You have to believe that what you're doing, as amongst the thousands of people who are doing kind of similar things, that your thing will be successful. And that takes a type of, people often call that perseverance or vision, or I call it irrational. It's fundamentally irrational, and it's phenomenal. It's like
optimistic irrationality.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I don't think being called normal or rational is entirely a compliment. It's just, to me, it sounds boring.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to be irrational. Number two, you really have to be evangelistic. Evangelist.
That's right.
Evangelistic. I kept thinking about that model, Linda Evangelista.
Yeah. That word always throws me off.
Right. And so you may be a very introverted person, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to sell constantly. You're going to have to sell to attract people to your company. You're going to have to sell to attract investment. You're going to have to sell to attract partners. You're going to have to sell to, very importantly, to attract customers.
Yep.
And people want to see you, and you're going to have to get good at that skill. And that's why I think Paul Graham and Y Combinator have been so great, because he's actually spent a lot of time coaching people who are not naturally, equipped to stand in front of a stadium full of people and sell.
Yep.
And that's what he's done very well. He's taken all those people and he's taught them how to sell them. So that's a very, very important characteristic. And third, and this is kind of a meta characteristic, is that unless you are very convinced that you as an investor are a phenomenal founder, the human tendency is to seek similarity. You like people who are like you. You like people who remind you of you when you were 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever. And that often selects for the wrong thing. To me, the entrepreneurs are like artists. They're kind of irrational. They got a vision. They're painting all these crazy things. We are not the artists. We are really like the art dealers. We have to think we understand art enough to take a look at you and say, you paint really well. I believe in you. I'm going to get you into galleries, and I'm going to get you well reviewed. And if you're successful, I'll be successful. But I don't have to know how to pick up a paintbrush.
You're like the Medicis. Like you're funding the innovation, the artistry, right?
That's right. That's right. But I don't need how to know how to paint. Need to know how to paint either. And a lot of venture investors, I think, especially those who get into the business early, think, "Oh, I was hired by this venture firm. I must be incredible. I'm seeking people who are like me." And when they select for people who are like them, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, that's not what you want to select for, because you want artists, not art dealers.
Awesome. So the last part was, how would a woman have an advantage or a disadvantage?
That is like,
because there's a ton of talk about the lack of women in technology and in Silicon Valley and all that sort of stuff, right?
The reason I struggle to figure out a rule for it is because you're talking to so many different people. Like at Xfund, a third of our companies are women founder and CEOs, and so to us that's an enormous positive. To others, as has been made very clear by a lot of news in the last
I don't know what you're talking
year
about,
or
Patrick.
so, sometimes you get a less receptive audience. And it is this phenomenon, this very human trait that people select for similarity to themselves. And so here's my 2 cents about it. I think you should just be yourself. You should not try to mold yourself into something you're not. And you should find someone who appreciates you for who you actually are. I think there were a generation of women in the past who rose through the corporate ranks, not in startup world, but in the kind of corporate New York finance world, who really were successful because they basically took on the personas of men. They behaved like men. And to many of them, I think it wasn't not very authentic. It became authentic because it came to dominate their lives, and they changed as people because of it, and now they are successful. But I have to say that the women entrepreneurs that I work with today, Anne Wojcicki at 23andMe, Dulcie Madden at Rest Devices, Sheila Marcello and Lisa Skeet Tatum at Landit, are authentically themselves. They are not molding themselves in any way to pretend to live to be successful in a quote-unquote man's world. They're just themselves, and they found people who really value who they are, and that's really the key.
Awesome. All right, let's keep going here. We have another one from Thomas. This is very topical. Today, Secret announced that they're shutting down. I don't know if you had heard that.
Yes, I didn't hear that.
Crazy, huh? How does a company with lots of capital and millions of users fail? What lessons can be learned from their rise and fall? And I have no idea if you're an investor in Secret or not.
I am not an investor in Secret.
Okay, so you can speak openly about the situation. So what? I mean, I was a little shocked when I heard that. It was like, didn't you guys just raise like a ton of money? And the thing I read said they're gonna give the money back and move on with their lives or something. But,
I think that's, first of all, a very healthy and good thing, because once again, they must have learned an enormous amount. You don't get into a rise of a company like that and its eventual fall without learning a huge amount. It's very honorable for them to give the money back. And I don't really have an opinion about it. I mean, it is the rough and tumble of Silicon Valley. It is a healthy thing. Yes, they attracted millions of dollars in financing, but probably no, they were not successful as a business. If they were, they would continue operating. So their usage, and I don't know any of the internal details, but their usage must not be what it once was or what they hoped it would be. And if that's the case and they didn't pivot, then it's a healthy thing for them to take that lesson, learn it, for the investors to get whatever cash they can get back, and for them to go on and do the next thing.
Yeah. Now, the thing that I found interesting was the founder said, we don't want to pivot. Like, this didn't go the way we wanted it to go. And I don't know that I've ever heard that before. Like, it kind of took on a life of its own, and it became this slightly evil, thing. And so they just said, we're going to shut it down.
I think that is sometimes a economically rational decision, because if you wanted to start a new company, you'd want probably a very clean cap table. Yeah. And if you pivoted, very famously, Twitter came out of Odeo. I mean, you're much better starting off with a blank slate than perhaps you are with a cap table that is already quite crowded. And
All right, Thomas. Well, thank you for that question. We have one from Luke here. It says, we need to part ways with one of our founders. Any advice for the best way to handle that? So I'm sure you've seen this in the past. What would you say to Luke as he is going through this process?
Well, Luke, it is probably the most difficult, wrenching, terrible thing you can go through, frankly, to get a founder. I don't know how far along your company is, or if it's, the earlier it is, the better it will be, the more you will recover from it. But just be sensitive. Remember that everyone's a human being, and that it may not be his or her fault. It may not be your fault. It's nobody's fault. It's sometimes just the chemistry of the group that doesn't work in this particular instance. And so I think it's very important to recognize what that founder has contributed to the company, be fair about recognizing what that founder's contributed, but at the end of the day, just recognize that sometimes things don't work out, to take all the personality out of it, all the personal drama out of it, and just try to focus on what is best for the company, because presumably that founder will go forward with some equity stake in the company, and you want to just focus on what's important, which is that that person played a very important role in this company, that person will remain a shareholder of this company, and let's do what's best for the company.
Yep. Great advice. And those situations are really hard because many times there's a friendship involved that may or may not survive the breakup of the founder, sort of group. So, good luck, Luke. I hope it works out. Let's see, next we have one from Meg. It says, startup hiring is so difficult. What advice do you give your companies, and how do you personally help them out?
So the advice that I give my companies is what we had discussed before. You kind of lay out kind of the mission of the company, the headroom to grow in terms of responsibility of the company, and the kind of the differentiated economics as compared to especially those large incumbents. What do I do to help them out? I introduce them to everyone. I mean, we keep a very vast stable of excellent candidates, of excellent COO candidates, VPs of marketing, VPs of engineering, engineers themselves.
Do you have like a database of these, or what, how do you?
We usually reach out. We have both. We don't have a database because everyone is moving in and out so quickly, and so you never know kind of who's fresh. So we don't have a full-time person maintaining a database, but we just kind of keep our nose to the ground. I mean, we meet, in Xfund alone, and that's quite apart from what I did for NEA. We saw 3,500 deals in the last 2 years, and many of those we follow. And as you say, when sometimes they don't work out, and you think, wow, those two people were such excellent engineers or designers or marketers. They're top of mind for you, and it's a really it requires, I think, some skill to know exactly what your company needs, and match that with someone that you believe would be a good fit. And oftentimes, the thing that at least we've heard from a lot of venture firms who have built up large recruiting presences is that those recruiters internally don't really think a lot about what you need, and they tend to just kind of shove a whole bunch of candidates down your throat. You feel obliged to take meetings with them because they're your investor. And in our experience, as we've looked at some of our co-investors who have had that type of facility, the hit rate on them is surprisingly low. Surprisingly low, because I think it's not customized and tailored enough.
Got it. All right, Meg. I hope that helps you out. Let's move to Michael. I'm an engineer with great product ideas and have helped build some successful startups as an early engineer. And I have no leadership qualities. Very, very self-aware, Michael. How can I make the jump to being a founder? Maybe another question should be, well, should you make the jump to being a founder? But what do you think?
I think there's a difference. Michael, is it? Michael, there's a difference between being a founder and being the CEO of the company. I think that when you say you don't have leadership skills, first of all, I wouldn't sell yourself too short. You do have leadership skills. If you have played a role in building excellent, successful products, then that takes leadership. It takes mental leadership. It takes organizational leadership. It takes judgment, which is all part of leadership. So I wouldn't sell yourself too short. I think what you mean is managerial skill, that you don't naturally want 100 people reporting to you. And I would disaggregate those two things. You can be a phenomenal founder and not a manager of anyone. And you see many companies in which that is the case. You have a person who is the kind of manager who everyone reports to, and you've got this brilliant, usually maybe CTO or designer or technologist who all he or she wants to do is just kind of work on the product and build something really excellent and let her partner take care of all the mess of the HR and getting everyone aligned and all that stuff. So being a founder doesn't necessarily mean you are the quote-unquote leader, the CEO of the company. Being a founder means having a real, again, it's like being that artist. You're that visionary, you need to create something. If you need to create something and it needs to exist in this world, then you are a phenomenal founder, and you don't need to be, professional, like, at the top of the org chart to do that.
All right, here's another one. Many startups take years before they become successful, but as a result of greater distribution channels and a larger market size, startups are gaining scale more quickly than ever before. How does this trend affect the type of traction you require before any investment, and how do you see it changing over time? This one is from Mikey as well. I don't know if this is the same Mikey, but
okay.
maybe Mikey sent us 2 questions.
Yeah, well, Mikey, 1 or 2, whichever you are, it's an excellent question. So you're right that it's never been easier to achieve scale because of the pre-existing distribution channels. However, that levels the playing field for everyone. So it is, in fact, probably more difficult to achieve scale because you're competing with everyone. And so, in our thinking at Xfund, we really feel like that's made it just a more level playing field. If you're a meritocratically better app, then you will get better traction. And so it hasn't really changed the kind of the thinking in our mind about the numbers. So I mean, at a seed, for, I don't know what type of business you're in, so I'm just going to make it up here. But if you were doing a mobile app, and you had tens of thousands of downloads and probably 30-ish% monthly actives, like, we would consider that really pretty good for a seed. And then at Series A, we'd want you to have kind of maybe hundreds of thousands and deeper engagement statistics. And we have all sorts of thoughts for that. But your fundamental question is, those numbers really haven't changed. But we believe the signals are stronger because 6 or 7 years ago, if you got the 10,000 users because you had some growth hack and you paid someone to like pay people to download your app, I mean, that was
right.
Said nothing about your product, really. It said everything about your being able to hack the distribution channel. Today, because distribution channels, everyone's hacking them anyway, and they're so meritocratic, generally today, and this is a gross generalization, but today your 10,000 actually means more to us than your 10,000 meant a few years ago, because their 10,000 today, we believe, is a more accurate reflection of the true value of your product.
All right. So we're running low on time. We've got time for one more, and
no relationship questions yet?
No. I'm sorry. We'll get you. It's at Patrick Chung on Twitter for all your relationship questions.
Oh no.
So this last one is from Rick. It says, if someone wanted to pitch you about their company, what's the best way to gain an audience with you?
Oh, so easy. Patrick@xfund.com.
Really?
www.xfund.com.
You answer every
totally.
Email?
I'm maniacal about email. Yes is the answer. You will get a reply.
And so 3,500 companies engaged over the last couple of years. How many of those did you actually end up meeting with? Like,
very good question. Very
5%,
good question, Joe.
10%?
No, actually, so I have these stats because we were just about to do our annual meeting. So 3,500 companies that we saw. About 1,000 of them, actually, I think the number is 953. We had some personal contact with. That is in-person meetings, phone calls, email exchange.
Wow.
Sometimes they're from Nebraska or there's some from South Africa, and so we do a Skype with them or whatever. Of the 953, 91 of them arose for partnership decisions, and then we funded 5 of them. So It was an incredibly high bar. I think it was, that was the first fund. It was too high a bar. There were many companies that we saw that we really should have invested in, but we felt both resource constrained in the first fund to do that, and we were just kind of getting the mechanics and the thesis of the fund together. That's all together now. We welcome all of your submissions.
Awesome. Well, let's hope that we get some as a result of this. And I'm sorry we didn't get to all of your questions, but we're out of time. Patrick, thank you for doing such a great job. You were awesome. The energy and the enthusiasm just they come right through the camera. I'm sure they will. And you can follow Patrick on Twitter for whatever questions you might have, relationship questions, startup questions. His handle is at Patrick Chung. You know, when I was looking you up, I found is there like a Patriots guy?
There is an NFL football player.
So you're not Patrick Chung 23.
He's a big black NFL player. I don't know how he got my name, but he did.
Yes. So don't put the 23 on there. At Patrick Chung for all your relationship questions. So we are off next week, but tune in 2 weeks from today for another episode of FounderLine. Our guest will be Mike Maples, who is the founding partner of Floodgate Fund. And Mike's been an entrepreneur and an investor in a bunch of great companies like Tivoli Systems, Motive, Twitter, Twitch, and Chegg, just to name a few. I'm sure it'll be a great show. That'll be 2 weeks from today, Wednesday, May 13th at 5 o'clock Pacific time. Thank you once again to our amazing sponsors, Oric, Square One Bank, Accretive Solutions, and Ustream. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @FounderLine. You can send us questions in advance via Twitter, via email, help@founderline.com, or through our new web form, which is you can find in our Twitter feed, and we'll try and get that Kaufman data or whatever you mentioned, out on Twitter as well. You can go to our website and you can find out about future guests, sign up for email updates, and even download the show as a podcast on iTunes. Thanks for watching. Here's to the crazy ones, and we'll see you again next week or 2 weeks.